their first uniform, their first number, their first teammate, their first goal, their first coach. We take great care in making sure their first isn't their last. We're so much more than a soccer class. Come play with us today at kickstarttoddlersoccer.com.
Our mission is to help players take their game to the next level and reach their potential. We help players develop fundamental technical skills such as ball control in tight spaces, dribbling at speed and changing direction, using a variety of 1v1 skills, receiving and finishing from different situations such as volleys, headers, one touch, and off the dribble, with and without pressure. In addition, we help players increase their speed of play, dominate with their off-the-ball movement, awareness of space, defenders, and teammates. We offer a variety of services such as one-on-ones, small groups, as well as large groups and team sessions. We have an experienced coaching staff that is professional, friendly, patient, while still holding players to high standards and holding them accountable. Over the past 3 years, we've built one of the best soccer-specific training facilities in the country. We've also developed one of the most detail-oriented training programs to help out players. No matter what level you're at as a player, I'm confident we can help you get better. For more information, visit our website, evolutionperformancetraining.com, or text or call 248-818-3943.
Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Troy and Northville. Serves made-from-scratch food, brews in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials or to book a private party, visit gcfb.com. Make sure you head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, or the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75. Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in!
We like to do it before we go out on the weekend.
We do.
We do it every week.
Whether we need to or not.
We did it today.
It was really dirty.
My parents do it every day.
Hey, kiddo!
Do it every day with the Unlimited Club only at Jack's Car Wash. Protect your car from the hot summer sun, dust, dirt, and contaminants all summer long with the Jack's Unlimited Club.
Join today, starting at just $24.99 a month.
I'm a husband. I'm a father.
I'm a sister.
I'm a son. I'm a brother.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister.
I'm a referee.
I'm a referee.
I am a referee.
I'm a referee.
All right, ready? Okay. Wait, we're just saying action.
Yeah.
And action. Hi, we're the Tilly Sisters.
And check out,
We're the Tilly Sisters.
check out our journey on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Okay, you weren't looking up. Hi, we're the Tilly Sisters.
And you can check out our journey on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Do it around the, all right. I'll just go like this. All right. Oh, wait, what are we saying?
Are you looking to grow here in 2023? Let the Michigan Soccer Network help you and your restaurant fill more seats. Help you and your law firm get new clients. Help you and your dental practice find more patients. Find more roofing customers for this upcoming summer. And to help you and your medical practice find new patients. To learn more or get started, visit MichiganSoccerNetwork.com. Don't miss out on any of the exclusive or live broadcasts right here on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Join John and I as we bring you all sorts of content involving soccer throughout the great state of Michigan. Why subscribe to MSN? Subscribe to catch all your local soccer action.
The Michigan Soccer Network, the only place to watch soccer in Michigan.
I watch soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
لا تنسون تتابعونا على Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I like to watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
Me gusta mirar fútbol en Michigan Soccer Network.
I watch soccer on Michigan Soccer Network.
I love watching soccer on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Back to Vitriol. He'll take a shot and he'll bear it. And then he'll fire it from Billows and it'll go in. Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one and that's going to go in. And both goals so far. He'll fire one and that's a wonderful save, Trinity. That's missed. Oh, it's Stone. And he'll fire one now from distance and that is in. What a strike by Ben Maher. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome once again back here into MSN Studios in Shelby Township, Michigan. I'm Jonathan Turner, alongside my broadcast partner here, Mr. Steve Besk. We are excited to bring you here this newest and greatest show here to the Michigan Soccer Network, the Morning Overlap here that premiere every single Tuesday and Thursday starting today.
Yeah, it's our new morning show where we're going to be able to kind of touch on all things soccer and all things that are also going on in the world and in sports and kind of finding that overlap between general life and soccer and so yeah.
So what are we going to talk about here in this first ever show? So as we dive into this show in a more deep level here throughout future shows, we'll talk today here about what you can expect from this podcast, this show, every single time we hit that record button. We'll also talk about amateur soccer. We'll continue our conversation from last night. If you didn't join us last night from MSN Weekly, we covered is amateur soccer growing too much here in the United States? We'll talk about that, touch on that some more. And then me and Steve have been talking about officiating here, and with the new VAR podcast coming to life here in the coming weeks here in February, we wanted to dive into specifically, what officiating looks like, not just in soccer, but to be fair, all sports. So, because so we'll get into that as well. But before we do anything and get any further, let's talk about what this show is going to be all about and dive into that. But if you haven't already done so and you're new to our network, hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate the subscribe. I keep saying this. It's your way of telling us and showing us that you care about what we're doing here, and that way you don't miss out on future stuff.
Absolutely. It doesn't cost you anything. We're not asking for subscribers through paid memberships or anything of that sort. So just go on to YouTube and hit that subscribe button, and be much appreciated from John and I as we continue to bring you live soccer broadcasts and other soccer content here on the Michigan Soccer Network. And like John mentioned, I think this platform for us on this morning show is going to be a way for us to check in, throughout the week a couple different times and really be able to kind of set the landscape of what's going on in the world of soccer, and whether that be locally in what's going on here in the state from a youth, amateur, and professional level, but additionally as well as what's going outside on the landscape throughout the country and across the world in general.
And so, and I couldn't agree more. And we were thinking about this show kind of from the standpoint of like how would we want to do it. Originally, we were going to call it the morning show, and try to be somewhat, I don't say advantageous, but maybe aggressive in being here every morning and trying to do a 2-hour show from 9 to 11. And we really thought that through. And I think Steve was like, John, that's going to be a lot. So we opted to go with this 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays for now. I think that we're going to eventually get to a point where we're going to want to talk about a lot of different things, and especially with when we get into season, with all these games that we're going to be covering, the opportunity to have a lot more content will be there.
So I think that this will kind of morph more into a daily show as we get through the rest of this winter and into the spring. But, the overlap, right? Soccer, for a lot of people, the average soccer fan, I don't know if they know all the nuances of what goes into preparing for a game, a practice, the training grounds, things like that. And, we as former players, referees, coaches, we know what that looks like. And when we were thinking about this show and having the conversation here every single morning, our thought process is like, how do we find a way to connect maybe the average fan, to a show like this, in a way that, I think hits a different way. It hits deeper, hits whatever way we can think of. So the overlap was born. And when we think about this and the overlapping run in a soccer game, right, where you have a player who plays a ball and then that player who passed it before that runs behind them, makes that overlapping run, right? We're thinking about, well, what would that look like in the form of a show, right? How do we kind of like make that one hit? And the idea behind this is that just like within other sports, sports can hit in different ways and they can reach different levels, different parts of society, different parts of culture. And the same thing is true with this show. Just because we are a soccer network does not mean that we cannot have conversations that overlap the game. And that was really kind of where, all of this, came about. And we appreciate anyone who's tuning in right now and a part of this. And, we're excited, to have these types of conversations, every single morning or every single time we hit that record button, not every morning because we're going to be only on twice a week. So, Steve, unless you wanted to elaborate on what I just said, I think that kind of encompasses what we were talking about. But then again,
No, I think you spoke at a good length there about kind of what the vision is, what exists, and kind of where this is going to go. It's going to be an opportunity for us to bring up other topics that maybe don't fit into the framework of some of our other content shows that are, really specific soccer centric. And so this is going to give us that platform to really kind of explore those things, have those conversations, and then potentially also, bring in people from different facets of life and really kind of engage with some of our advertisers and some of the partnerships that we've built. And this might be that kind of platform that we can really kind of explore some of those things with. So
for sure.
Without further ado, let's jump into it, John.
We will. But before we do that, though, I put up our main screen here, and behind me is a very, very blank wall. Okay, and I talked about this last night on our MSN Weekly show. We need your help. You have a team, you have a club, you have a business. I guess as it relates to soccer, we would love to start putting stuff on the back of this wall here. This is our studio wall. We thought about putting up bigger TVs and blocking the wall a little different way, but we felt that this is a great way to allow the soccer community here in Michigan to be able to help us decorate that wall. So if you have scarves, if you have, any type of thing that you want us to put behind us, as long as it's clean, I think that it's got to be clean. It can't be something that would be, not clean. But send us your swag. Send us something we can hang behind us. Of course, we'll make it work with, maybe some shelves for cups, some neon lights and some things like that. But we want your help. So go ahead and help us with that. And also, this is a live show, so why not allow live viewers to call in, right? We have our comment section. You can get your comments in. We'll bring those in throughout the course of the show. But call in at 248-617-7715. You call, we will go ahead and take your call here live on the air. And
it could be dangerous, John.
It could be very dangerous. But either way, we will take your calls as long as you keep it clean. But, hey, treat this like a call-in show. That's why we're doing this, and we're excited to keep it going. So let's get into this, Steve, and start talking here about amateur soccer. Last night we discussed this on our MSN Weekly show, and I'll tell you, it was an interesting conversation. We had Vinny Vasilevsky here on our show as a guest host, and if you don't know what MSN Weekly is, It's a weekly show we do on Monday nights live right here in studio. And we bring in a guest host. Dan Sticker and I are the main hosts, and then we bring in a guest host to bring in and to have a conversation. So last night was about amateur soccer here in the U.S., and it was a good conversation. Amateur soccer is growing at a fast clip. I don't think it's ever been growing as fast as it is today. In this country. Just recently, we've seen a new league pop up on the women's side here. There are already 2 leagues available here in Michigan at the higher levels. And then the men's side, we have the UPSL, we have the MPSL, we have the MUSL, we have the Midwest Premier League. We have all these leagues. And in my research and preparation for last night's show, I realized for the first time ever that there was an association called United States Adult Soccer Association. Now, I did not, it is a organization that falls within the hierarchy of U.S. soccer, and it consists of 54 state organizations, as well as regional and national leagues, such as the NPSL. Now, the NPSL is the second largest amateur league in the country. I think the UPSL has, with over 400 teams, has the most in the league, in the organization across the country. The Women's Premier Soccer League is the largest women's league in the country. There used to be a team here in Detroit, Metro Detroit, called the Detroit Sun. That was here back in the day. That's not here anymore. So the UWS is the largest, maybe was the largest league for women's at the highest amateur level here in Michigan, aside from the USLW now, which is now available here as well. So there's so many leagues, but there's 54 state organizations across this country in regard specifically to amateur soccer. Jacob Little, by the way, coming in here with some good morning, fellas. Looking forward to hearing all things soccer. Well, we appreciate that, Jacob. We appreciate you tuning in on this Tuesday morning. First comment here of the day. Jacob Little, we'll talk a little bit about the Littles here throughout the course of our time here on the network. But so the question back to everybody, is the amateur game growing too fast? Steve, your thoughts?
Oh, thanks, John.
Was I talking too much there? I like to talk, so it's.
I think much like any other sport that's out there, the youth game goes cyclical. There were times when youth baseball was, I'm sure, at a peak point. It's nowhere near maybe a peak point anymore. The way that youth sports in football, basketball, and other sports have peaked and starting to grow up. But you don't see, and there's adult leagues and there's amateur leagues in those as well. And really soccer has been the more recent sport, maybe outside of like lacrosse, that has really started to take off at the youth level, and that's really where it begins. And that you have so many more people that once they graduate from high school, get through college, into adulthood, that still want to play, but not necessarily at the highest competitive level, but they just still want to play some kind of organized sport. And so I think it's great that these leagues exist, and it's great that we have all these options and especially both for the men and women to compete at a higher level, at a competitive level outside of maybe a recreation intra level. And that's great. But we're at that crossroad where it's becoming, how much is too much and how much within certain areas. And the problem, I don't know if it's a problem, but the issues that we face and the things that we look at is that here in Metro Detroit, there's such a condensed area of soccer-driven, soccer-fanatic people, which I think is great. However, at some point there will be a balance for how many teams the individual fan can support and how many of these teams can survive on a professional level given the amount of money that these teams have to pay for, example, league costs, and those types of things. Like, John, if you right now, I'm not going to delve into your fanhood and which teams you support or don't support, but realistically, as a parent, how many professional soccer teams do you think you legitimately could support with just even following daily news and maybe going to a couple of games a year?
I mean,
in Michigan.
Yeah, that's a good question. First things first, I don't tend to do a lot of going to games anymore, mainly because
you go to games all the time. I'm there with you.
I meant like, going as a fan, right? I mean, I had not been to a Lions game for almost 20 years. Went to the first game in 20 years. I enjoy watching the game at home on my couch. I have control of when I get to the bathroom, without waiting to a line and things like that. So I think maybe I'm the wrong person to ask that question to, because I don't know if I'm even. It's not about a money thing to me. It's about a level of comfort. So, but if you ask about I am a huge fan of Detroit United. A huge fan of them, because just watching them consistently in this area be very, very strong in the UPSL and doing so over a long period of time, which is really hard to do, because you think about this, the players, that they can go anywhere they want. They're not tied to contracts. There's no loyalty in these leagues. Right, so if you're playing for a Nationals UPSL team or in Inter Detroit, you can go from that team to an MWPL team, and play at the same time. Right, we saw players who were in the USL 2 last year with the Flint City Bucks were playing with the Michigan Stars in the Midwest Premier League this past summer. We saw them at the same time. It's not uncommon to see that. So, but I'm a huge fan of them. But I wouldn't go pay $10 to go watch their games.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
but that's my point, is that there's good, even for, right. So say you're not going to games, taking your family to games, but say there's a soccer family out here, it doesn't matter where the kids play club soccer, there's the potential that club may have a pro team, or there's a pro team in their area and they may go, and that's great. However, that family may go to 1 or 2 games a season. Great. That's awesome. The team loves that support, but that family can only really support one team. There's not going to be too many people that are going to be able to say, hey, I'm going to DCFC games, I'm going to OCFC games, I'm going to Flint City Bucks games. I'm not saying there's not people out there that do it, but it's going to be very limited to have that much support for the amount of pro-type teams, not to mention getting into like the women's teams, all at the same time. And so there's going to be a balance. Like, unfortunately, there's just going to be teams that financially, unless they have the backing, it's going to be a struggle, I think, to have as many teams as we do, if the leagues consistently are going to set these standards of cost and fees to be in the leagues, and upgrades or certain requirements. And I think the product, we've already actually seen it on the women's side, the new Women's Super League that we talked to Aaron Roy about last week on MSN Weekly. I think that is a perfect example of the amateur leagues getting to a boiling point where there's a teetering point. There's going to be a fall off, and a bunch of Michigan teams look to say, hey, we're going to maybe get out of some of these other leagues that we were in, or maybe create a new league to put our top level team, because we want to play with the restrictions we want to play. We don't want to ask for boatloads of money from these players. We don't want to look at travel restrictions for these players and force them on a heavy workload. So let's create our own, and because now they can control the system. And so I think there's going to be a fine line and a balance, and it's great that we have all these teams and leagues, but it's also, proceed with caution, because, how many can exist all at the same time in this general metropolitan area?
I agree with you, and if we really look at the landscape here, and we've talked about this, we talked about last night. Me and you have had these conversations many times. If we look just at the UPSL here in Michigan, right now there's 12 teams that are listed on the UPSL website for the Midwest East Conference. Okay, the UPSL is the largest amateur men's league in the country, 400 plus teams. They play 2 seasons, a spring and a fall. It's mainly consists, and this is most of these leagues that we're talking about, mainly consist of current and former college soccer players, right? And Steve's got to stop kicking the cameras. It's like the tall Steve over here, former goalkeeper from Madonna, keeps kicking our cameras. So if they shake, it's not because of John. It's
trying to make a kick save or something down here.
But
it happens.
It's got to get used to the new setup, is what it comes down to. But anyways, looking at the UPSL, 12 teams. Okay, they play in both the spring and the fall. It is it has a very large purse if you win the national championship, $20,000. I don't know the registration fees. I don't know how much it costs to get in. We aren't privy to that. My guess is somewhere in the neighborhood of between $5,000 to $10,000. Okay, that doesn't include referee fees, field costs, uniforms, etc. It doesn't include any. It just includes buying into the league. All right. Now, last night during our show, Edwin Jimenez, one of the owners of Inter Detroit, who plays in the Midwest Premier League, formerly in the UPSL, had said that, with the Midwest Premier League, there's a voting process that takes place for these teams to get in. So it's not all the board and all the current teams have to agree to allow these teams into their into the league. MUSL, MPSL, I think the UPS all come from the same kind of thought process. If you have the money, come on in. So there's not a selection process or an approval process to get in.
And that's because I think more and more now it's just great is there are more leagues. So these leagues that have created can be pickier about who they let in. When you and I were growing up, we were graduating high school, going into college. If any of your female soccer friends who played, they had no choice. There were no women's leagues to play in when they come back from college.
Nope.
It was join the
co-ed league.
The Whistle, WSSL, the Western Soccer League, the Women's Western. Like there was not many options for them to play. So that's great that there now are more options for them to play.
For sure.
But now they've come to the point that we've gotten so many teams and so many leagues that I'm not going to say the product's been diluted because anybody can play and if there's an available option, why not? However, it allows these other leagues to now make that decision to say we don't just need anybody. We don't just need you because you have the money. Like we want a certain talent level. And, you're not going to bring in a bottom feeder team just because they're going to hand you a paycheck. If you're not contributing with value to that league, why bother? And so, it's a way. And I think that, the teams in the Midwest Premier League value that because I think they feel they have more control over their league and there's no higher governing body telling them what to do, telling them what teams they have to play when, to be honest, they don't want this, Team X over here to come in because they know that maybe they won't compete at the highest level. And so I think there's value in that. I mean, there's value in the way that the Women's Super League was created in that I don't know the selection process, but I'm sure there was some discussion amongst either the founding club themselves or the surrounding clubs about who they were going to invite in. And I think that just tries to create a higher value and a higher competition level for those specific leagues. And they can exist alongside the others, but I think there's going to be a balance.
So, again, finding the balance is going to be the key here when it comes to all of this. Because as someone who's a fan of soccer, I don't have enough bandwidth to support everybody. Now, from someone that broadcasted these games, I've been to all of them, right? And we have seen all different leagues. We've seen the UWS 1, the UWS 2. We've seen the Midwest Premier League. We've seen the UPSL. We've seen the MPSL. We've seen high school, college. We've seen NISA. We USL 2. We've seen all of these leagues, both from a broadcasting standpoint, and I would say in a more intimate or up close look of how these teams and these organizations are ran. And the common problem. And let's go right to NISA. Even though NISA is in the professional realm, let's go right there. NISA is failing because they don't have teams, they don't have money. It's funding. They don't have the money.
Funding at all levels.
We're talking about teams that have a payroll, that have a dedicated location for their games that they either they built or it's like they're renting. I mean, these are full-fledged teams, right? We have two teams here in Michigan that are part of NISA. Michigan Stars, now the new expansion team in Gold Star FC, being played out of Livonia. We're broadcasting their games here this upcoming summer. Now, it used to be Detroit City was in that league, and then they went to the USL Championship. But that league is struggling. I mean, we just saw, and speaking of referees, we just saw a post here in regards to U.S. Soccer from the officiating. I think it was from the union saying that, hey, we haven't received payment. There's $10,000 of payments that had not been made.
And speaking of our first comments, Jacob Little just, talking with him recently the last couple of days, just got paid.
Oh,
within the last couple of days.
So there you go. So
and it's great that there's being taken care of, but at the same token, why is it taking so long for these referees to get paid? And it's that trickle down. The league financially, if you can't take care of the things you need to take care of, and then it trickles down to where referees aren't getting paid and all these things, the structure of the whole league no one wants to work in the league.
And to be fair, that's probably why, like these amateur leagues, you don't pay the organization and they pay the referees. You pay the referees. So to be fair, it's my guess is that the league says, hey, send us your money and we'll pay. Well, maybe those leagues should say, well, no, you take care of the referees and we'll stay out of it, because then that doesn't happen, right? And I'm not saying in all examples, right? But if a team is struggling financially, they're not going to be able to pay the officials. So, but anyways, that's a huge problem right now in NISA, is finding funding and being able to stay afloat. Now, you look at the UPSL teams, the Midwest Premier League teams, you look at this and say, okay, well, how can they afford it? Now, the Midwest Premier League probably has a lower registration cost than that of a UPSL.
Well,
I don't know the details behind it, but my guess is it's probably a lower cost. They don't have the same overhead as a very large league like the UPSL. But I also asked this question: what are you getting with registration fees? Like what?
Well, that
what
was
do you
my
get?
question. Is
Like,
where is the and not I'm not specifically to UPSL or UWSL or any of the leagues that are out there, whether it's USL Championship even. I'm just baffled at these registration fees. The leagues themselves, in my opinion, have just become too greedy in that they are just requiring these things because they can. And then, don't get me wrong, they're going to find ways to spend the money, or they're funneling it within the organization of the league. But you're just going to see a drop at some point in some of these leagues. You're just going to see certain franchises and organizations just refuse to join or refuse to continue their partnerships with these leagues and their involvement and create new leagues, because you're pricing people out. And it's not that the different leagues and the shouldn't be able to make money. 100% agree with it, but at what cost and at what point are you finding that value in bringing in teams just because it's of a cost issue? So
it's a great question, and we're going to answer it here on the other side of the break. You're watching the MSN presenting our first ever edition of the Morning Overlap here with Steve and John. We'll be back here on the other side of the break. You're watching Michigan Soccer Network.
Our mission is to help players take their game to the next level and reach their potential. We help players develop fundamental technical skills such as ball control in tight spaces, dribbling at speed and changing direction, using a variety of 1v1 skills, receiving and finishing from different situations such as volleys, headers, one touch, and off the dribble, with and without pressure. In addition, we help players increase their speed of play, dominate with their off-the-ball movement, awareness of space, defenders, and teammates. We offer a variety of services such as one-on-ones, small groups, as well as large groups and team sessions. We have an experienced coaching staff that is professional, friendly, patient, while still holding players to high standards and holding them accountable. Over the past 3 years, we've built one of the best soccer-specific training facilities in the country. We've also developed one of the most detail-oriented training programs to help out players. No matter what level you're at as a player, I'm confident we can help you get better. For more information, visit our website, evolutionperformancetraining.com, or text or call 248-818-3943.
Hi, this is Grunthik Chatterjee. Join me for Nationals Monthly here on MSN starting this January.
To do it before we go out on the weekend.
We do.
We do it every week.
Whether we need to or not.
We did it today.
It was really dirty.
My parents do it every day.
Hey, kiddo!
Do it every day with the Unlimited Club only at Jack's Car Wash. Protect your car from the hot summer sun, dust, dirt, and contaminants all summer long with the Jack's Unlimited Club.
Join today, starting at just $24.99 a month.
I'm a husband. I'm a father.
I'm a sister.
I'm a son. I'm a brother.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a referee.
I'm a referee.
I am a referee.
I'm a referee.
And welcome back here once again into our MSN studios in Shelby Township, Michigan. Jonathan Turner, Steve Besk here As we continue this conversation about is amateur soccer in the United States growing too fast. And I'm going to give you my opinion here, right now. I mentioned this last night, and I'll mention it again here today, is I do. I think that we're putting way too much into this. I remember when I was just out of college, I wanted to go play. And at that time, for me, playing, or at least for me, was playing for the Troy recreational department, in Troy, where we played on a co-ed team, 11v11 co-ed. It was a blast. I had a great time. I could score some goals as a goalkeeper. When I got to go out in the field, we were winning big. Indoor soccer, right? Same thing. We played, 5v5 with 66, 5v5, whatever it was. I had a blast with it. I wanted to have fun. I didn't want to go out and get murdered. I know that when I was refereeing those games in the MUSL at that time and the MPSL, which were the only two options, mind you, many years ago. I remember playing with Jimmy Statura. I was on his team, his goalkeeper. I remember watching it's a Sunday night, we're 6 p.m. game kickoff, someplace down the road from here, some park. And I remember as a goalkeeper, I'm watching as Jimmy is running with the ball. He lays one off, and out of nowhere, this guy comes in and just spikes up right to the back of the leg. The guy gets a red card. Jimmy's down. I thought he was dead. To be fair, right? I thought he was dead. I'm like, I'm sitting there going, "Oh crap!" Right? I'm thinking he's gone. And but that's what those leagues were all about. They were it was people going out there and getting murdered. It was like World Cup every Sunday for all these guys, and that's what our competitive game was. And to be fair, as a referee at that time, that's kind of like how you that was, we're gonna throw you out in the ocean, with no life preserver. Good luck, son. And you'd have to manage these kind of matches. And it's morphed into, God, if I'm in college and I'm just graduating, I've got 13 choices.
Yeah.
13 choices to go play in a league.
And again, I think, the root of it is great that these opportunities exist, and only time will tell, I guess, where some of these leagues will be in 3 to 5 years. We've seen the movement from teams, just as much as OCFC and DCFC have moved leagues. Flint City and the expansion into some of the women's teams into the USL women's side, the creation of the Super League for the real local Metro Detroit type area, but. There's going to be there'll be a point when certain teams will find ways to keep afloat and others won't, and I guess that's we'll have to let time pass and kind of see where things exist within another year or two, and either we're gaining more leagues and more teams and the interest just keeps growing, which would be great, or if there is a leveling point where some of these leagues drop off or start to minimize.
I got to say, Danny Garrett has hopped in.
Oh.
Danny Garrett, man, we want to say thank you. First time, long time is what they should say, right? First time, long time. Some comments coming in. He's like, don't tell my boss, y'all can get me fired. So I will not tell your boss. If you want to have your boss call us at 248-617-7715, we will happily let him know that you're not watching the show. You are able to call into the show now here. You're watching the Overlap show here on MSN. We haven't talked a lot, and I want to do a quick segue here, not necessarily away from the amateur game, but we cover a lot of these games. We do. And we've done that now for the better part of a year and a half. And the talent and the level of play is pretty good. I mean, compared to watching Detroit City FC, of course not, right? Or watching an MLS team. I've been to an MLS game the first time, and it's crazy to think about this. My first ever MLS game was here this past summer, mainly because there's no MLS teams in Michigan. And if you ask me, where would I rather watch the game? Like I just said this, I'd rather watch it at home than drive, whatever. But we happen to be in Columbus, so we went and watched the game. I've never been to a U.S. national team game. I've never been to an international game. We had the World Cup here back in 1994, but getting tickets then was difficult. So I'm hopeful that within 2026, when the World Cup comes here, that we have a chance as part of covering that with the media. Maybe we can make our way to a World Cup game. That'd be pretty sweet.
That'd be pretty neat,
right? So, but this isn't about talent. this isn't about quality of play. All right, that's the one thing that I want to say right now and be very clear about, because I know that as I'm sitting here talking about the game growing too fast, that could be like, well, John, you're just smashing players. No, I'm not. I mean, we've seen a number of these players. We've seen Inter Detroit playing against the Lansing Common. That matchup, that we weren't there for that game, but that game was a very, very good game. We've seen the UPSL finals these last, we've seen 4 of them. Right, the last two, in this past fall, spring, and then last year, both of those. Very good going to penalty shots in 2 of them. Right, the matter of fact, back-to-back penalty shots between the same 2 teams. Right, so we've seen really good play. This is not about quality of play. This is about too much in a very small area. Right, and that's really what it is. I mean, if you talk about the teams that are out in Grand Rapids on the west side of the state, out in Holland and Muskegon and things like that, that's, there's a big gap between what happens out there. I mean, there's a handful of teams on the side of the state. You got a couple kind of sprinkled into the Lansing, kind of Ann Arbor area, and then the rest are right here. They're all right here. Michigan Stars right down the road. They're U23 playing the Midwest Premier League. They're right down the road this way. We got FK Olympico, Macomb over here, the Nationals, right? We've got all these just teams right in this area. And it's too much. It's too much. One is, and I talked about this last night on MSN Weekly, is that if you're looking for advertisers or people to sponsor your shirt or your jerseys, good luck. Good luck. Because the reality is what business is going to put their name on your shirt when you have 10 people coming to games?
Yeah, I think more times than not you see the shirt sponsors end up coming from a company that happens to be associated with someone on the team. Yep. And it's a personal thing because you're right, it's just tough and just the landscape of adult amateur soccer within the state, especially in the Metro Detroit area, is just it's taken off and again, it's not to be taken as a negative. I think there's some real good positives from it. It's just a matter of how much is too much, and I think we are starting to cross that threshold of just so many teams and so many options that at some point, because everyone wants to think they can run it better and do something different their own of their club with their guys. How much is that sustainable? You spoke to Lentz about Detroit United and. I know several of those guys that are involved with that team and really well, and they've had great success. It's been great to, see them actually finally advance through the playoff, beating Chicago Nation in a game we called here on the network. But where does that team or that franchise lie if Benny and Tatai and David Tatai move on or move out of state? Is there enough core guys to keep that group together? I'm not saying there isn't, right? Just for example sake, is that? And so a lot of these teams and clubs sometimes are really controlled and run by 1 or 2 maybe guys that really have a stakeholder in it and really have a passion for it. And some of them will continue to stay on and keep that franchise alive. We've seen that throughout various clubs and teams. However, there are opportunities sometimes where teams won't and teams will fall apart. And so there is going to be that balance, and that's why I think from the club side, you see the pro team on the Detroit City men's side playing in USL. They also have their women's side playing. That's a sustainable model for the club because there's players playing in that club all over that can play there. Legacy Center, we called those women's friendlies. Legacy Center has created through the Legends FC. They have their own pro team where to play on their pro team, you have to be a former player within the club. And so I think those are ways that you definitely help create sustainability because you have a pipeline of players. Maybe the talent won't always be to the highest level, but you have a pool of players that you're always going to be kind of pulling from and trying to create. But some of these other startup smaller teams really just don't have that infrastructure that potentially long term they may not be able to sustain as long.
No, and when we talk about when we talk about like a Detroit United, for example, we know that the reason that they've had sustained success is because the model of which they have their roster set up is a mixture of players who are experienced, and when I say experienced, over 25 years of age in a lot of cases, right? And then a mix of a younger set of players. And it's worked. And to be fair, if you want to play for a national title at the UPSL National Championship, right, you have to have a team that has a very good, I would say, a core experienced, former collegiate athletes and a mix of younger, freshmen.
You have to continually recruit the younger college talented type players because, as you and I both know, we're not getting any younger by the minute. And every time I go out there, I feel like I discover a new muscle that I didn't know that I could hurt.
Especially in our voices now, right?
Yeah. So no, and you're right, and I think it takes a lot. I mean, there was. There's men's teams that have gone through this, throughout the state here that have had success at national levels. I remember the Canton Celtic. It was probably 2012, 2013. I remember. I just recall from talking to him recently. I think Dave Hebestreet was part of coaching in this team, and they went on to nationals. And I don't remember if they were runner-up or national champions. They went very far. It's like under 20. And it was a good core group of kids that played together, for a very long time, and they were a good men's team. And then there's very few of them left that may be still playing today. You know what I mean? So sometimes these teams can be formed and have great success, but now within all these leagues and the fees and things like that, it is hard to sustain, and you have to be consistently always changing and trying to update your team. And to your point, Detroit United does a great job of recruiting younger players and always trying to refresh their lineup with that balance of that experienced players, and that's what's got them to that success. And I think those are some of the things to try to keep that success, but not every club has found a way to do that.
So we had this conversation last night, and if you're just joining us, we do appreciate it. If you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do so. It's like your way of showing us that you care about us. I'll keep it in that guilt trip all day long. The last night the poll was 80. It was 20% in saying the answer to this question is no. 80% saying yes. And I know for those who are not part of the Michigan landscape and are across this country might have a different opinion because of wherever they're located, within their market, their region. Some things that came up last night during the show were things like, hey, geographically, can the leagues do something about this? Because we talked about Detroit United. Detroit United is a brand new team that's launching that started last year in the Michigan Premier Soccer League, the MPSL, and I mentioned that they got smashed. They got smashed. They got beat up. I don't think if they did win a game last year, it was one, but most of their games were beaten pretty significantly and handily to teams that have a history in the MPSL, but also have teams in the UPSL as well as the Midwest Premier League. And now they're going in and they're joining the Midwest Premier League this year as one of the new expansion teams in that league. And I'm not saying they're going to get smashed this year, but just down the road from them is USL2 Oakland County FC, which is literally a few miles away from them. Inter Detroit, right? Again, we talk about this, Inter Detroit, and you've got, the Nationals, and we've got FK Olympico. We've got Detroit United plays out of Farmington. We've got Detroit Union that plays out in Lake Orion that might be moving around. They've been in Waterford, right? We've got FC Berlin that when they come into town, which is not part of that original, they're based out of Toronto or Ontario, and they come in and play their games usually in this area. I mean, there's a whole bunch of soccer games. And then we even talked about the Carpathias of the world that they kick around still, I think, right? In the MPSL or the MUSL that they're part of. There's just so much soccer. And how do you put a quality product on the field where you can even get a fan base?
Yeah,
right?
It's tough for the startup. I mean, I think everyone wants to envision that they can create a startup that becomes something like what DCFC became or what Lansing Common became or what Ann Arbor has become, Grand Rapids, and it's just, to be honest, it's just not going to happen for most teams. And that's not to say that you can't try and strive to increase your fan base and your organization, but sometimes the things that come out of the organic build and the way that, a team like DCFC, it's just never going to be duplicated, or it's very hard to duplicate it. Everything has to be in place, and so it's very tough. So when you launch a new team into a league, whether it be MPSL or Midwest Premier League, it's like Troy United, but you're competing in a backyard where there's another club like OCFC and the other clubs that you mentioned around them. It's very tough to draw up talent because, like you mentioned, there's players that can play for these multiple leagues, but there's also some players that are like, listen, I'm not going to play in multiple leagues. I'm going to just commit to one team. So It's tough to get talent. And, there's only so much talent worth bringing in for some of these teams. So it's tough to build, and it's tough to do. And I give everybody, forming these new teams all the credit in the world, because it takes a lot to organize all that and get it done. But it sometimes the success will not follow as quickly sometimes, and it's very difficult, because a lot of these established teams and teams that may not have a cool fancy logo or the nicest uniforms, but they're all guys who just play and they've played together, and so those types of things can work against you. So again, the landscape is growing and it's great. But yeah, there's gonna be some fine lines of really where growth and expansion based on, and then results and that sustainability.
So we got a comment coming in from Ben Robbins. First time watching, been waiting for someone in Michigan to start a pod like this. Well, we appreciate it. He said, respect for Midwest United. We appreciate you tuning in. And, here's the thing in regards to what you just said. What is the goal? I think that we need to ask this question. What is the goal? Okay, Troy United, whatever expansion team's coming up here in the amateur game, what is your goal? Because if your goal is to play soccer, that can be done at any level in MPSL. Because I'm telling you this right now, I am tired of seeing coming across my feed player announcements. I mean, we see player announcements now for everything, and it's like, okay, we're watering down what this means. And I'm nothing against you, Troy United. Nothing against. In fact, if you want us to cover any of your games, give us a call. Right? So, because guys, I'm sitting here going, what is the goal? If the goal is to play soccer, you don't need to be in the MWPL to do that. Right. If the goal is to just put some friends together and have fun and keep it fun and engaging and competitive, there's lots of opportunities to do that. You don't need to be.
Everyone wants to be their own football manager. Everyone wants to be the one that starts a new club.
There's games for that, though. I think it's called football manager.
Right. No, you're right. But I think people see the success of the way DCFC and other clubs have happened, and I think people truly just are delusional in the think that they're going to be able to create something. And again, not specific towards one club or another, but there just needs to. And I think with the way that all the leagues that we just discussed now exist, there is opportunities for, hey, write us the right check amount and you're in the league. It has nothing to do with creating and making sure you have the infrastructure and making sure that you can have the finances and making sure you have the field. Like, how many leagues in this, and this is just the case because of the area we live in, but how many teams in some of these amateur leagues have multiple home venues? Like, they can't even secure an actual home field on a consistent basis. Now, granted, there's some being rented out for other things and usage, and they're using high school fields of that nature because of turf. So, having the consistent surface and knowing what you're going to get, which is great. But it's hard for some of these clubs to even lock down venues, and that can create, how can you create identity with a team when the venue's always changing? Well, and we know DCFC, it's at Keyworth. Now, granted, it started at Castac, but
but they've only had two homes.
But you mentioned DCFC and you're associated immediately with Keyworth. You talk about even a little bit to the point of Cedars Alianza FC.
Corktown
has created that connection with the corner ballpark in Detroit.
Yeah.
And creating that's their home field. We understand their circumstances. I know that things change. It's not always possible. But sometimes even just creating that consistency factor is huge for parents. Like, I'll tell you right now, I reffed one of the OCFC games many years ago, right? And it was one of their first seasons, and the game was being played at Stony Creek High School. I have no idea if they play there anymore. But that's the thing. I couldn't tell you where OCFC plays. I know Flint City Bucks play at Atwood Stadium in Flint because I know that's the stadium in Flint. Yeah. It's Atwood.
Yeah.
There's no connection. And again, teams have to use the resources that they have access to, but there's no connection. Livonia City has played at Madonna, but I believe they may have also played at other places as well. So it's just sometimes there are certain clubs, and if you don't have that connection, it's hard to create that fan base and that consistency when you don't even have. And we're just picking out one thing: the stadium.
Yeah. And Danny Garrett has made some comments, and I want to touch on this. And Danny, when we look at the teams that have a good fan following and fan base in these leagues here locally, Livonia City is at the top, of that. the level, of the totem pole, so to speak, right? When it comes to base, I still think, and I know you might argue with me on this, is Lansing Common. We have said this. I continue to say it. Lansing Common probably has the strongest fan base in that supports them and follows them and is a part of that whole thing, more than any team that we've basically seen. Now, Alianza,
any teams we've covered, yes.
Alianza FC has a great, strong showing of people. I don't know if they're necessarily fans. I think they're just people coming to the game that had.
It's a community event. It's a community event. What they've done is they've created an event that the community wants to come to for game days.
But
not necessarily those
fans.
people are exactly hardcore fans of the team.
So then and I think that, hey, we've seen the post in regards to Lansing Common out in the community. We've seen Livonia City and they're out in the community, because this was Dana's comment. For me, the soccer team builds much needed culture and entertainment in the city. Well, okay, let's talk about that for a second. Okay, Oakland County FC, which is part of the USL2, which plays their games now out at Royal Oak High School. It used to be Stony Creek back in the day, as you mentioned. It went to Stony Creek, Royal Oak, Clawson, back to Royal Oak. They now are in Royal Oak. They spent $15,000 this year to create a bounce house and community environment that got people to come to the games, to bring their children, so they could bounce and have some fun. Gimmicky to get people to come to the games.
Sure.
In order to get them in the stadium, right? And then, of course, the product on the field then has to deliver. I think that they average somewhere between 400 and 500 fans a game, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, now that can generate some revenue. If you're charging $10 a person to get in, that's not a bad take on a game day. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that all these teams who are popping out of nowhere are creating entertainment and fun in the community, you're full of shit.
Well,
I don't mean that in a negative way, and I'm not trying to be difficult right now. But come on, guys. I mean, let's be real here.
I don't think that's what he's saying.
I know what he is saying, specifically in regards to Livonia, and I think that Livonia
he's saying clubs in general should be finding ways to. They're bringing entertainment, and that there's going to be some level of interaction within the community. And you're right. There is no way that all these semi-professional amateur teams, most of them are not doing anything within the community, right? And that's okay. They're meant to be a soccer team.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what's the goal.
But the clubs that do are the ones that usually end up finding a sustainability, because sponsorship opportunities and connection with the community is a way to build trust and to build that partnership with the area in which you're playing. But it's also very difficult to do that when you're moving around all the time. Calling yourself Oakland County's huge, for example.
I know. That's why I'm saying, and Danny, this was not directed towards you specifically, because I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the club's mindset, if all these clubs are like, well, we're going to help the community.
Great.
Do you need to start a soccer team in order to do that?
No.
And I feel like what's happening is these clubs are selling us on a bill of goods that they're going to create this team of a bunch of young college and former college athletes who, let's be honest, don't have enough time to train, let alone do community service projects. And now the whole goal of the club is to create a community engagement program.
Well, I think this let's just cut the BS, John. All these clubs have to put out a PR message and have to create this visual and have to create this aura and persona that we are going to be involved in the community. Because, to be honest, when you go to these board meetings, when you go to these city council meetings and have to get approvals for stadiums or have to get approval on the leagues, you have to play to how are we going to benefit from it, right? What's the benefit for the city for allowing you to come in and use our space and to allow them to do it? So, yeah, of course, they're going to say they want to do things for the city. And it's not to say that a lot of these teams and clubs don't actually put time and effort into the community. Of course they do. Some bigger than others, some more visible than others. We get that. However, it doesn't have to be. First off, it's not going to happen at a lot of the amateur level, right? It's just not, because the concern is
I'm putting it out there
to play soccer, right? But it can exist. But let's not put this facade up that that this is going to be a big community thing, because every club can't do it. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the player commitment. They don't have the people, the city liaisons to work with the community. And again, not saying it doesn't happen. We know it exists at all levels across the state, not just pointing out, certain areas. But I think there's a balance, and I think it's one of those PR key hot words that, just say you're going to do community work, and everyone's like, look, they're just such a great community built program, and they're going to do great things. Well, yeah, of course they want to, but are they actually going through that? Not as often.
Let's go clean a park up. Okay, great. I mean, and again, I support any community work. Believe you me, I am 100% behind that. But you don't need to start a soccer team in order to do it. You could just become good people and just do that on your own. But and you don't have to have players paying $300, $400 to be part of a team in order to go out and do community service. So either way, here's what I want to do. We're gonna take a break. This is a great conversation, and we appreciate you joining us here for our first ever edition of the Morning Overlap here with Steve and John. We're going to be back on the other side of the break to continue this conversation, and then we'll get into the Sky Judge conversation about, hey, what does that look like for soccer? What does it look like for officials in general across all sports? You're watching the Morning Overlap on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Are you looking to grow here in 2023? Let the Michigan Soccer Network help you and your restaurant fill more seats. Help you and your law firm get new clients. Help you and your dental practice find more patients. Find more roofing customers for this upcoming summer. And to help you and your medical practice find new patients. To learn more or get started, visit MichiganSoccerNetwork.com.
Their first ball, their first uniform, their first number, their first teammate, their first goal, their first coach. We take great care in making sure their first isn't their last. We're so much more than a soccer class. Come play with us today at KickstartToddlerSoccer.com.
Granite City Food and Brewery has 2 Michigan locations in Troy and Northville. Serves made-from-scratch food, brews in-house beer, and even has brunch every Sunday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To learn more about their daily specials or to book a private party, visit gcfb.com. Make sure you head over to Granite City in Northville at the corner of 7 Mile and Haggerty, or the Troy location at 16 Mile and I-75.
Now Worrell has a good cutback from him. He'll fire one, and that's going to go in!
All right, ready? Okay. Wait, we're just saying action. Go. And action. Hi, we're the Tilly Sisters.
And check out,
We're the Tilly Sisters.
check out our journey on the Michigan Soccer Network.
You weren't looking. Hi, we're the Tilly Sisters.
And you can check out our journey on the Michigan Soccer Network.
Do it around the, all right. I'll just go like this. All right. Oh, wait, what are we saying?
I'm a husband. I'm a father.
I'm a sister.
I'm a son. I'm a brother.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a referee.
I'm a referee.
I am a referee.
I'm a referee.
Welcome back here once again in MSN Studios here in Shelby Township, Michigan. The Morning Overlap with me, myself, and I, and Steve Best.
Sometimes I think it is just you, yourself, and you.
Wow. Throwing some darts here this morning. Here on the morning, on the Morning Overlap.
You didn't play the ball or make the run. You didn't.
I do tend to talk quite a bit, so it is possible. But we
used to have this thing with my friends when you would be like taking too much time either talking about something and you weren't. We used to instead of having like a bell, like an actual physical bell, like we would just say the word ding, and so it would be like ding, like you're taking too long. Just let someone else go.
I'll let the audience say if I'm talking too much.
Maybe I'll just ding you every once in a while. Just ding, just drop in a little bell noise. Your time limit's been hit.
starting on Thursday, we'll have a new
the morning overlap with John. Where'd Steve go? Just John.
I have been accused.
Don't worry, he'll tell you. He'll tell you exactly what's up.
I have been accused of talking too much. It's not the first time. It will not be the last. And anyways, we appreciate you joining us here. Either way, on this Tuesday morning, the last day of January. It's January 31st. Tomorrow's a brand new month. February.
You know what that means? The Super Bowl is right around the corner.
Super Bowl is right around the corner. Playing in the Super Bowl this year, the Kansas City Chiefs. Should have been the Bengals. We'll talk about that maybe. And the Eagles. So a very interesting matchup here coming here in 2 weeks from Sunday. So anyways, some comments coming in during the break. Before I get to those comments, I want to talk about Granite City here for a second. Granite City of Troy and Northville, they tap new beers every week. Did you know that, Steve?
I did not, and I live 1 mile from Granite City, Northville. So
I live about 4 miles from the one in Troy, and I'll tell you that's pretty cool. So not only do they tap new Granite City beers, they also tap Michigan-made beers as part of their lineup of beers. So they don't serve any bottled beer. It's all draft beer. It's a brewery, food and brewery. Their food is fantastic. Steve and I have eaten there many, many times before. We've held some live shows out of the Granite City in Troy. So we're actually going to be doing a food review here next Monday during the day, probably the Northville location, so I can go out towards Steve. Maybe the Troy. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we're going to do a food review and try some of their food, and put that on video and bring that to one of our shows here on the network. So
finally, all the food talk and. Finally going to do that food review.
And we're going to start doing more of them.
If you'd like us to come do a food review at your restaurant,
yes,
just reach out. Let us know. We'll come try it.
If you make candy and you want to start coming out try your candy, we will, speaking of which, Sour Patch, we'd love to have you give us a call. We enjoy Sour Patch on a very, very high level.
All of them. All the Sour Patch.
But let's get back into the comments here from Danny Garrett. Let's take a look here. First one coming in. The best teams in our state are the ones that have built out on a community, grassroots and great entertainment. What I feel like you guys are saying is soccer just needs investment and money to succeed. And I don't see that being sustainable. And so...
Ding, 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 ding. Correct. I agree.
Well, money gets you in the door. It does. If you have some deep pockets, you can stick around. The reality is how much are you going to pour into it, right? I mean, the reality is Detroit City FC, when they first started, it was a group of 4 or 5 friends that said, hey, let's create something special here. And it was just to have fun. And then it morphed itself into something more that turned into what it is today. But in order for them to be sustainable, what do they need? They need money.
Correct. And the way they were able to do the crowdsourcing funding, I mean, they raised over like $700,000 in a matter of 2 weeks, a month, whatever it was. But the other biggest thing too, and unfortunately every club can't have that, is success, is winning. Let's be frank. As much as DCFC created a great atmosphere and a fan base and the Northern Guard and this and the other, they won games.
Yeah.
No BS. They won games. And when you win, people get attracted to winning. That's just you can have the fanciest stadium and the nicest things in the concession stands and bouncy houses and a great location, but if you're not winning, let's be honest, no one's going to care. And DCFC has found ways to sustain success, which has been huge. They've won at every level they've been at, and that just doesn't happen. And that's the other thing is people see the success and they think, oh, it can't be that hard or that we could do something.
Oh, it's hard.
It's extremely difficult. And as a supporter for years and years when they first started, where I've been to so many games and I've been to some of these playoff games, as much as I'm a Detroit sports fan and have seen bad bounces go against certain teams here in this city, man, it always seems like the bounces go in their favor. Whether it's just a goalkeeper getting a touch and it goes in, or a loose ball falls to a DCFC guy and to get a game-winning goal. And I'm not, of course, they haven't won every single game they've ever played. I'm not being unrealistic, but they've had a great amount of success. And of course, I think sometimes those good bounces are the product of hard work and the product of those things. But it seems that Detroit City had success, and like cut and dry, winning breeds fan base.
Yeah.
And you know, I not to say Northern Guard wouldn't have cared about the team, wouldn't have cared about the city and their involvement. Sure. But does the Northern Guard gain the attraction and, you know, the articles and the discussion on other podcasts that they do on Twitter and those if the team wasn't winning? No. Because no one would care. But the fact that you keep winning, you can kind of do those things.
Spot on. Winning does bring a successful fan base, right? Because when we look at Danny Garrett's comment here, sustainability comes by getting people to come out to your game. You do that by providing entertainment, community-focused work, something like getting local sponsorships, attending events, etc. Well, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. If your product's terrible on the field, you're not gonna. People aren't gonna come. They're gonna come to one game. You know, sustainability can come in a lot of different ways, and community involvement it can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and things like that. I just don't. I don't know how a Midwest Premier League team or a UPSL team, for that matter, is going to be able to survive with fan base. Right? I mean, that is unrealistic. It is an unrealistic expectation because if it's like, for example, like there's not, I mean, Jimmy John's Field, what Jimmy John's has done here locally with the 4 minor league baseball teams is they really haven't made you fall in love per se with the teams, but they've made you fall in love with the league. And they've created one location, right? Brilliant. It's brilliant, right? You have 4 teams that come in, and whatever. You might fall in love with a couple of players, but realistically, you're falling in love with the league at a location that's right in Metro Detroit, right? It's a really, really cool concept. If all these teams played at the same location, and I've talked about this with the leagues, if you took every single team in Metro Detroit and said, hey, you're all playing your games on Saturdays at this location, boom, 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 you would create an environment where everybody knows the games are at, right? And then you could create a sustainability within the teams in that way. But there's a reason there's a lifespan in the UPSL. It's like 4 years. Yep. There's a reason there's a lifespan in the Midwest Premier League or these it's like 4 or 5 years. You run out of resources because the player who's playing for you today is gone in 4 or 5 years.
If that.
Right? If that, right? Then the next new player comes in, and, well, what's the next new team they want to play for that's having success? Because there's no loyalty in rosters. There's no loyalty in the rosters. So sustainability at those levels, unless you are a multimillionaire who's willing just to throw money at something, it's not strong. It's not a strong outlook. And that's probably one of the reasons why you can't get financing for these types of teams. One of the reasons why you're going to have a hard time keeping sponsors. I remember when I played softball back in the day, this is how I met my wife. I would go to local businesses and say, hey, we will wear your jerseys, and every game will come in after our games, and we'll eat at your restaurant. That's how you get your money back. You get me jerseys and give me $500. We'll come and eat after every game. All 10 of us will show up, and that's how we were able to get sponsorships. Is that how you're getting sponsorships today? You go to a restaurant and be like, hey, put your name on my jersey. We'll feed ourselves at your restaurant.
I think that was definitely, a way of a lot of bars and restaurants doing it. I mean, you still see to this day, the amount of, softball trophies or things, sponsorships of teams in businesses, and it still exists. I mean, I think there is, a platform for that. And to be honest, I think honestly, you brought up Jimmy John's Field. I think that's a potential gold mine in the way that some of these smaller leagues could try to find a way to operate where, maybe you have, game weekends at a site where there's a game at 3, 5, and 7, or, and so you have, the whole league playing on one day or half the league playing on one day, half playing on Sunday and that type of thing. Because now you can create, hey, not only are people going to come out just to maybe watch their team, they may come early to watch the game before, stay after to watch another game and maybe try to create interest. And also, like to your point, creating that one centralized location, which I think could be huge. And that may be the way that some of these smaller leagues will only be able to survive is actually finding a way to come together and putting on games. And maybe it's a combination. And again, depending on the hierarchy of these leagues and who controls the decision-making, it'd be great to be able to say on a Saturday you could go watch 2 UPSL games and 2 Midwest Premier League games back to back to back to back. Granted, no one's going usually to watch 4 games. I get that. But maybe you pick 1 or 2, or that it's there all the time and that, hey, there's a good matchup. I may go watch this game and this game. And creating that consistency, especially because if the right venue is chosen, if the right venue is used, you could create that entertainment that we were talking about and really a much better fan experience on a game day experience like you find at a Keyworth, like you find at an Alianza, and by doing so, pulling resources together, because it's great that Team A has great ideas and a little bit of funding over here, and it's great that Team B has a little bit of funding, but what about Team C? Well, if you can combine these things, especially when we're talking about just in Michigan, it's a little bit easier to work than we're dealing with out of state. There might be ways for some of these leagues to prolong that sustainability through that.
I agree. We've been talking about essential location for us from a broadcasting standpoint would be fantastic. We would have to leave, just park ourselves there for 6 games. That'd be great. But I do believe that is the only way that the amateur game in Michigan could be sustainable long term. Long term, if you were to do that. And so one location, and it would suck for the if you want a home stadium, but finding a home stadium nowadays is so difficult that it's almost laughable how much money you got to pay to get a stadium nowadays. So but then again, if you're talking about growing a fan base, if the fans know that every Saturday you're at X Stadium, you don't even have to market it per se.
All right.
They just know it's there.
There's a better chance people will show up when you have that consistent venue rather than, where are they playing this week? Where are they playing? There are things like that. I mean, speaking directly, I'm going back to obviously DCFC. Obviously, the club is what it is. But my uncle who lives 90 minutes or an hour west of Howell, northwest, whatever, in the middle of Michigan, never watched soccer, never played soccer. Started coming to games and going to games at DCFC, and he's fallen in love with it. And he makes the trek he's gone to away games now across, when they played some other teams in Michigan and done this, but he knows he's at Keyworth, and I get, obviously Keyworth has that connection, but he just loves making the trip out, and he'll text me all season, hey, I'm coming to this game or this game, and I may not be able to be there, but he knows where he's going to be. He picks the dates that he's going to go, and he's found that connection with this club that he had no soccer in his life. No interest in the game whatsoever, but my cousin started getting involved in it, and then myself, and then he just kept asking me, and he comes to a game, and he's like, I get to all this food and the beer, and then everything, and he found a connection with it, and not every club can create that. We get that, but sometimes just having that connection to a field or a location to know where that consistency is, I think could be huge.
No, it could be. I think we've beat this topic to death. Maybe the ding, ding, ding for the topic itself. But,
there's the horse.
Here's the thing. I have nothing against the amateur game. We cover it. We cover the amateur game. We're in the broadcast booth. And so for me, I'm not bashing it. The question about is it growing too much, it is about, you lose value when you have too much of something. And I believe right now the game of soccer is being devalued by the amount of teams that are popping up. Because if you're all trying to fight for a piece of the pie, you're making it a lot harder when you have a whole bunch of people trying to get a slice, right? So my suggestion as a fan of the game, as someone who's been a part of soccer my entire life, who enjoys it very thoroughly, so much to the point that we created a network called the Michigan Soccer Network, is less is more, right? Less is more. So, hey, if you want to go build something and make something special, by all means, go do that. But do it. Don't just say you're going to do it. Don't just be like, create a team and that's what we're no. Don't be all like, walk the walk. Be the Lansing Common. Be the Livonia City. Don't be something that you're not and pretend to be something that you aren't, right? And that to me is where I think this is getting lost. And So that's where my thought process is on that. So let's dive into this next topic, Steve, and it kind of came about today. We were actually on the way into the studio. Steve and I have our morning conversations. I almost feel like we should record those sometimes, just to.
No, we most definitely should not do that.
I didn't say. I said
kids in the car, traffic.
Just not good. But anyways, let's talk about the Sky Judge. This has been a conversation, a heated conversation. Controversial, especially right now, especially with the NFL, right? The NFL has, as far as the officiating this season, I think it's been the worst. I'm not even talking about the blown calls that cost the Lions playoffs. That's just one of the damn refs. But anyways, I know I'm off point there in regards to that. But what does the Sky Judge even look like, right? What does it even look like in the sense of how it could be implemented? Because and to be fair, it's not like it's a camera. I mean, there's someone literally who will be sitting in a box someplace looking at this TV screen and going, "Hey, that is not right." Ding, 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 down to the referee, and they just changed the call. That's really what Sky Judge is designed to be. Am I to simplifying it, of course?
Yeah,
simplifying
of course. I think. Well, I guess the topic came up when we were talking about this because obviously in the world of sports in general, not just to mention the football games this past weekend with Cincinnati and Kansas City, but as well even in the NBA. I'm not sure, John, if you saw this. We didn't mention this earlier, but Lakers Celtics, LeBron James goes up for a layup end of regulation in a tie game, claims he gets fouled. Replays clearly shows he got fouled. Whatever. I'm not a LeBron fan, but either way, that's fine. The refs missed the call. That happens. Well, LeBron threw a tirade on the court, and, I thought that was pretty childish of him, but whatever. Pat Beverly in the timeout grabs the camera and a photographer's camera and wants to show the referees. And, listen, okay, they got it wrong. Whether it's introducing a challenge to a type and creating let's be honest, officiating in general has been put under the microscope, to say the least, in all major sports in the last several years, not just recently. So much so that every sport has started to take a new look on how, whether it's MLB implementing a replay system, robotic umpires with the strike zone now. I mean, to be fair, I was talking with a friend the other day, and really, does baseball even, outside of an umpire on the field to communicate, does baseball even need umpires on the field anymore? To a point, I mean, everything is very cut and dry with, ball got to the glove first. He hit it was in a strike zone or it was not. It was a home run. It was a foul ball. Out and safe. Did he touch the bag? I mean, there are so many things now that with TV and camera that we can have those decisions made. And in football, I'm not going to get into, what rules and what football, needs to be challenged or cannot. That's not the point. I think in the last probably 5 to 7 years with the implementation of HD TV, 4K TV, we see everything now. Nothing goes missed. We get replays. We see everything. So, it's easy for everybody, every Joe Schmo at home to go back into their DVR and watch and say this was missed, this was missed, this was missed. So it's getting extrapolated on a much bigger scale now with, Twitterverse and those types of things as sharing these information. And I think each league and I think, to be honest, they all need to take a look at the way that soccer is handling things. If you looked at the most recent World Cup in Qatar, for every game, how many match officials are on the field, John? On the field.
On the field?
On the field.
Well, there's three. There's three plus a fourth. I don't know if you call it on the field.
He's on the field. He's standing between the benches. All right,
fair enough.
4 referees on field. Okay. So we have 4 officials. There's at least 4 or 5 people in the VAR room. There's a VAR head official. Then there's a VAR assistant official. Another VAR assistant. There's multiple. I'm not going to I don't exact the breakdown.
One purpose. I think one person's job is just to literally handle the
offside,
yeah.
Violent conduct. But my point is that soccer now has created this system, and one of the leagues that gets ridiculed the most for officiating decisions. Heck, people all the time. You don't even know how much time is left in your half because somebody has to come up there and put up a board. Now, you and I understand the intricacies of what makes up extra time, but the average viewer may not. There are things that soccer is doing now with taking the information, looking at what's on the field, and being able to use microphones into the referees and saying, get this right. And I think at the end of the day, the average fan at home just wants things to get right. Your players on the teams you support may not always make the plays. They may not always make the shot. But when a clear and obvious event happens in a game that usually gets called by the referees and doesn't, which for various reasons, sight line was blocked, age of the referee with the chain and sticks is 75 years old, doesn't place the ball right. There's so much riding on the line with these games now that I just think it's time that we use the technology to get it right. And it doesn't mean that we're stopping games every 2 minutes, but let's build in guidelines. Let's build in to use the idea of Sky Judge, the idea that we can communicate from an office at all these professional stadiums down to the officials on the field to get it right. And I think that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing, because we're not human error. They're never going to get everything right perfectly on the field. It's just the case. But if now we're talking about, I mean, let's be honest, you've got gambling sites with millions, if not billions of dollars in these industries now, and we're going to let the outcomes of these games be dictated by some guys on the field. And speaking from a referee himself, like, it's always easier to be able to look at the replay. I get that. And we don't have that ability, when you're on the field. You're making a split decision. So having that help is huge. And I think it would just be huge to be able to bring into some of these other sports and just get things right. Soccer has not, on the college level, maybe this is something we'll delve into in a podcast, but in the college level, we can only use VAR for certain things. So I don't have the ability to say, was it a handball or was it not? But at the professional level, at the FIFA level, at the EPL level, at the pro level, they can dictate so much more and have that ability. And as a fan, it doesn't always work perfectly, because it still depends on those people in the room. Let's not, VAR is only good as the people making those decisions and making the communication. However, I feel a lot more comfortable now with VAR in certain ways, knowing that they will look at certain things, or a VAR check has happened, rather than what I used to sit back and watch and say, how have they missed this? How did the fourth official miss this? At least I now know, with video of everything, at least we're going back and we can tell when the ball crossed the line, and we can tell when certain things have happened. John, to you.
There's a
ding.
I took his notes to heart from the previous segment. What is the goal of this? Is it to get it right? Is it what is the goal of looking at calls?
Well, as an on-field referee, I think it's just to get it as best right you can in the moment.
Okay, so but VAR and challenges in football and all these things that you read. Okay, what is the goal? The goal is to make sure that the calls on the field, the things that are happening in games, is to get it right. Right?
Correct.
Why is there a limit then?
Well, I think that we can't have, if you're going to say football.
Let's talk soccer for a second. If the goal is to get it right, why is there a limit?
There isn't.
Well, there is. There's a limit. I mean, you can't review everything.
They're reviewing everything all the time. I mean, if you watch an EPL game right now, a foul happens or a potential foul happens in the box and the ball gets cleared.
On a goal, though, I'm saying it's only in soccer when it comes to things related to penalty shots and or a goal being scored, then everything is on the table.
Yeah, but there's checks going on during the game all the time. It comes up on the board. If there was a potential elbow and the ref didn't see it and the play continues and the ball's in play, the board comes up and says VAR check complete. But if it doesn't, they'll whistle down.
But there's no elbow. If there is an elbow on a normal play outside, not in the box, just on the field.
Yes, it will be stopped.
They stop. They stop for elbows now.
Yes,
and do what with it?
If it's serious foul play or violent conduct.
Okay, but just a careless tackle is not being reviewed.
No, if there is just a simple tackle, correct. But if it is something that warranted a send-off,
or
not a caution,
and a goal,
or it happens in the goal area,
or there's a goal that was scored,
sure.
They're looking at that,
right?
So I get that. So my point though is the goal to get everything right or to get some things correct? Because
that's the line. Is what deems an important decision. So in soccer, it's easier to say, hey, final third or in the penalty area, right? The penalty area, because that's something that could be obviously directed towards goal. But then also red card situations, because those red card situations affect players on the field. So that can happen anywhere. But it's harder in other sports. It's hard to say. I even have never agreed with, I never understood why you couldn't challenge a play in the last 2 minutes and only the booth could review a play in the 2 minutes. If you want to say maybe you could only challenge in the last 5 minutes, fine. But then what's the difference from a call happening in the first quarter that doesn't have an impact on the game? So we walk a very tight line in what what can be reviewed and what can't. And I think every sport's different. I think, we can't sit there and say, was there holding on that play in football? There's holding on every single play in football.
You're
right. We can't dictate what is, and to Jacob's point, what is clear and obvious. In some sports, what is clear and obvious is one thing because it's a black and white rule issue or violation. But in some sports, there is such a finer line with what should be called, when are we calling these things, and so I'm not. There's no perfect system, and I think each sport would have. There's no consistent way to address this over the four major sports.
Well,
it's going to take tweaking, but I think there are things that can be done to at least improve the quality of the officiating.
So, a couple things. I think, and this is my perspective, is that, and not the NFL. If I look at just soccer, and Jacob, thank you for commenting about the clear and obvious and in attacking phases of play. We've talked about this quite a bit. Is a foul that takes place at the 50 the same foul that takes place in the penalty box? Are they equal?
No. They're not.
They're not, right?
And as much as people think they are, and people, you'll have a coaches up in the sidelines saying, that's a foul there, but it's not a foul there. That's just not the reality of the game. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to try to keep the game as fair and equal as possible or call things. Of course, we want to try to call the same fouls if that happens there or if it happens there. But turn on any pro soccer game, and you'll see on a corner kick at least one or two guys full-on bear hugging an opponent, and it does not get called. Sometimes it does get called, and you sit there and go, well, that was obvious. That was easy. Why did he do that? But then watch 10 other games, and you're going to watch 10 other corner kicks happen, and you won't see a single call. And it's baffling because how is that not getting – and that becomes, like to Jacob's point, what is clear and obvious? Well, in the penalty area, it becomes this very muddled gray area of what is clear and obvious. And, yes, handling, swatting the ball is different than a grab of the shirt from two players or two players going in. And so it's a very tough situation to look at sometimes because they aren't always clear and obvious.
Well, the bear hug, though, at midfield is still a foul.
Yeah, but it's a foul every time. If your two players are going by and he goes to run by him and he hugs him, it's going to get called in any game you turn on. In most cases, it could be a yellow card. I don't care what level of play from U9 to the highest pro in this league, that foul is going to get called unless there's an advantage that's going to happen. The referee more than likely is going to call it. But that same foul happens in the box, and I'm telling you, it's less than 50% that it's going to get called. It's probably even less than that. And not because it's not a foul, but because the way the game, I think that the fans want it, the players and coaches, it can't be a foul every game, or we're going to be calling 7 penalty kicks a game.
So this is a great conversation. And the reason I asked that question is because if Sky Judge becomes in existence, and I think if we look at VAR and the way it is now, it's very close to Sky Judge.
Very much so.
Very, very close. I think that there's other because again, at any point in time, a red card could be issued. Do I think that there could be an opportunity for VAR to evaluate yellow card or cautionable offenses?
Sure, of course.
Sure. The problem is and really the root of the problem has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you want to get it right, but you don't want to waste a bunch of time in the process. Like, that's the balance, right? Let's be honest here. Let's be 100% honest. When it comes to football, we could challenge every play. The problem would take 9 hours. I just happened to call a women's basketball game here this past weekend on Saturday, and in the first half alone, there were 39 fouls called. The Cleveland State was in the bonus for the better part of 15 minutes out of the 20 minutes in the first half. All right, I think they had a total of 40 free throws in the first. So that's a lot of stoppage. If you reviewed everything in a game, it would never end.
No,
it would never end.
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest complaint about VAR at the beginning was that it was taking too much time, and they've sped up the process, and they've done that. And to your point, basketball is the worst. The worst. We're gonna go take a look at the monitor, and the referees are standing over there, and they've killed the momentum of the game, and they've all these things because we're gonna look at who at last touched out of bounds. I think that's one of my favorites now and I'm not sure how much basketball you watch, but it seems to happen in the NCAA tournament more than ever in the last 2 or 3 years. Is a player has the ball and it gets knocked out of bounds by what everyone in the crowd looks like, the defender knocked it out of bounds off the guy's hand. But if you slow it down, when he hit it, it still was on the fingertip of the offensive player, and so it's their ball. And if we're going to break it down, the video's not wrong. The video would be supporting that it's, the team who everyone thinks knocked it out. It's actually their ball.
Yeah.
But if we go into 4K and say, it was still touching the fingertip of the other player, and even though the expected call, the call that everyone wants is ball going the other direction. And I have a hard time because I'm an official, and I have a hard time of, do we want to get this 100% right? Or are we trying to give the viewer or the fan the expected call what everybody wants? And it's a balance because sometimes, and that's where I think it comes into this replay of, are we going to sit here and say that, the ball was touched because we have a challenge and we have the replay and we should get it right, but no one else has an issue with the game. And that's the balance of how much interjection should officiating and Sky Judge have into some of these sports, and how much involvement or when should involvement really take place?
No, I think it's spot on. And again, I think when it comes down to, there have been certain plays in the NFL where you're like, wow, like that's a wow. Like, I think in the NFL, which is completely different than that of soccer and even basketball, I think, the ability to get it right without really having to do these types of reviews where you're having to go to some monitor and you're just like, hey, you know what? The booth calls down and says, hey, and this is what Sky Judge really is all about, by the way. It's all about there being someone watching and saying, that one's wrong. We're going to reverse it real quick and make that change. And if you don't think on some level it's already happening within the NFL, then you're not paying attention, because you see it all the time where like they're doing something all of a sudden.
After review, discussing
even though
it has been determined that the player did not catch the ball, therefore we have an incomplete, because so much so then is dictated, especially in the NFL, about what the original call on the field was.
Yeah.
How many times do they come back and say after further review the call on the field stands?
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough evidence of anything video to overturn it. So it's all based on what originally gets called, but what's originally being called is just a judgment call sometimes. So it's a very tough line to.
It is
probably a discussion for another day.
We are going to continue this conversation here on Thursday, and we'll talk about some other things here coming up on our show on Thursday morning. But that was show number 1, Mr. Besk. What are your thoughts?
Oh well, so much to talk about, so little time. We end up going a full 90 minutes. Didn't know that it was going to end up going that long, but sometimes we just couldn't stop the discussion. So look forward to more on Thursday.
Me as well. Back at it here on 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. Remember, this will be available on all listening platforms here very shortly. As soon as we're done here, I'll get it up on all of them, which is kind of cool. So, remember to share this with your friends, your family, and more importantly, come back for more here as we have a lot more shows coming your way here in 2023. MSN Weekly aired last night. That's available right now on YouTube and all listening platforms, so take a look at that. We talked about the conversation as far as the amateur soccer. We talked about that, and a great conversation with Vinny Vasilevsky from Oakland County FC. Next week on MSN Weekly, we've got Todd Hugh joining us and talking about being consistent at the high school level and how that works. But we're excited for the direction of the network. Again, Steve Besk here to my left. My name is Jonathan Turner. We appreciate you stopping by here on this Tuesday morning, and we'll see you next time here on the Michigan Soccer Network for the Morning Overlap on Tuesdays and Thursdays.